The soft rustle of silk echoed through the vast sunlit hall as Emily adjusted the delicate veil over her face. Her fingers trembled slightly beneath the weight of the gown, a pristine white dress that felt more like armor than celebration. She stood alone, just moments before the ceremony, staring out the window at the sprawling ranch that would become her new home. She was marrying a man she barely knew. Emily's chest tightened as the heavy doors creaked open. Guests filled the seats, their faces expectant, smiling with that kind of joy she couldn't share. Among them were the powerful elite of Dallas society, dressed in designer suits and shimmering gowns. They came to witness a union meant to secure business ties, wealth, and influence. But for Emily, it was a prison disguised as a fairy tale. Her groom stood at the altar, tall, rugged, and impossibly handsome. Alexander Cole was a billionaire cowboy, a man whose wealth was matched only by his reputation. Known for his stern demeanor and sharp business mind, Alexander rarely let anyone pass the walls he built. Emily had heard the stories, the whispered warnings. Yet today, he looked just as nervous as she felt. The ceremony began in a blur of vows and promises, words that felt hollow as they passed through her lips. When Alexander slid the ring onto her finger, it was the moment everything changed. The chapel seemed to close in around her, and the applause felt like chains tightening. After the ceremony, the guests gathered for the reception in the grand barn, transformed with twinkling lights and fragrant wildflowers. Emily floated through the crowd, offering polite smiles while her mind raced. This wasn't her dream. She wanted to run, to escape the destiny her family had carved out for her since childhood. As the evening darkened, Alexander approached her quietly, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "Emily," he said, "I know this isn't what you wanted, but maybe we can make it work." She looked up, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "How can I trust that? I don't even know you." He sighed, a rare vulnerability flickering in his gaze. "Neither do I, but I'm willing to try." The night ended with the promise of a future neither of them fully understood. Later, alone in the vast, rustic bedroom of their new home, Emily's tears finally broke free. The weight of the day, the fear of the unknown, and the loneliness pressed down on her until she wept softly into the darkness. She felt utterly lost. But as the moonlight spilled through the window, a gentle knock interrupted her solitude. Alexander stepped inside, his face softer than before. "Emily," he said quietly, "I don't want you to be afraid." In that moment, something shifted, a fragile hope that maybe this cold marriage could thaw. The night was just beginning, and neither knew where their hearts might lead. The morning sun spilled through the massive windows of the ranch's great room, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Emily woke to a silence that felt heavier than the night before, a quietness filled with the weight of unspoken expectations. The wedding night had left her heart bruised and confused, tangled between fear and a faint glimmer of hope she dared not fully acknowledge. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to gather strength for the day ahead. The ranch was vast, an endless expanse of fields and rolling hills that stretched far beyond the horizon. Yet, instead of freedom, it felt like a cage. When the door creaked open, Emily startled. It was Alexander, not in a suit or formal wear, but dressed in faded jeans, a simple shirt, and the unmistakable boots of a cowboy. His hair was tousled, and there was an unfamiliar softness in his eyes. "I figured we might start the day outside," he said, his voice low but steady. Emily hesitated but nodded. She followed him through the halls, out onto the porch, where the fresh country air mingled with the scent of wild grass and earth. The sun was already warm, and the distant sound of horses made the ranch feel alive in a way the mansion's walls never could. Alexander led her toward the stables. The smell of hay and horses was comforting, oddly grounding. He showed her around, pointing out the horses' names, telling stories about the ranch's history, and revealing pieces of himself that no one in the city ever saw. Emily listened, surprised at the ease of his company. The man she had thought cold and untouchable had a quiet kindness beneath his rugged exterior. She found herself smiling, the first genuine smile since the wedding. Later, as they walked along a dirt trail winding through the fields, Alexander paused and looked at her. "I know this isn't what you imagined," he said, "but this place, it's home, and I want you to be a part of it, of me." Emily's heart fluttered, torn between the fear of losing herself and the strange pull she felt toward him. She wanted to believe his words, to trust that this marriage could be more than a contract. The day stretched on, filled with moments that slowly chipped away at her walls. Alexander taught her how to saddle a horse, how to listen to the wind, and how to find peace in the quiet spaces between the chaos. That evening, As the sky burned orange and pink, they sat by a fire pit on the porch. The crackling flames reflected in Alexander's eyes as he shared stories of his childhood growing up on this very land, learning to ride before he could walk, and the dreams that drove him to build an empire. Emily felt herself opening up to revealing fears and hopes she had buried deep inside. For the first time, she saw Alexander not just as a husband or a businessman, but as a man who carried his own scars and dreams. When the stars appeared, they sat side by side in comfortable silence. No promises. No expectations, just two people beginning to find each other in a world that had thrown them together. As the night deepened, Emily realized something she hadn't dared to admit. Maybe this stranger in boots could be the one to heal her broken heart. The night had wrapped the ranch in a velvet cloak, dotted with stars that seemed close enough to touch. Emily sat on the porch swing, the gentle creak blending with the sounds of crickets and the distant call of an owl. The fire pit was reduced to glowing embers, its warmth lingering in the cool air. Alexander joined her quietly, slipping onto the swing beside her without a word. For a long moment, they just swayed gently, the silence between them filled with things unsaid. "I haven't always been the man I appear to be," Alexander finally confessed, breaking the quiet. His voice was softer than usual, touched with a vulnerability Emily hadn't expected. She turned to him, curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" He sighed and looked up at the stars. "My family. They built this ranch from nothing. My father was a hard man, demanding and unforgiving. I grew up under that shadow, expected to take over, to be strong no matter what. But I wasn't always that boy. I struggled, made mistakes." Emily listened, sensing layers beneath the tough cowboy facade. "I buried a lot of pain in my work. In this empire," Alexander continued, "I didn't know how to open up, not even to myself. Maybe that's why I was so cold with you at first." Her heart softened. "I was scared," she admitted quietly. "Scared of being trapped in a life I didn't choose." He nodded slowly. "I don't want you to feel that way. I want us to build something real, something better than the past." A breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers. Emily reached out, her hand brushing against his. The touch was tentative but electric. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered, "but I want to try." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "That's all I ask." The honesty between them was like a fragile thread, weaving a connection that neither could ignore. The night felt infinite, filled with possibilities. Later, as they moved inside, Emily found herself thinking about the secrets people carry, the wounds hidden beneath the surface, the hopes that keep them going. Maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about accepting the imperfect and choosing to stay anyway. As she lay in the bed they now shared, Emily felt a cautious hope stirring in her heart. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she was willing to walk it, not alone, but with Alexander by her side. Days on the ranch settled into a rhythm: early mornings, hard work, and quiet evenings filled with shared glances and slowly growing smiles. But beneath the calm surface, Emily's heart wrestled with a storm she wasn't ready to face. Alexander's world was rugged and raw, full of sweat and soil, and a kind of honesty Emily had never known. Yet, with every step she took into his life, she felt a tightening around her heart, like barbed wire gently but unrelentingly pulling at her soul. The day began with the sun casting golden light over the fields, and Emily found herself helping with the cattle. The scent of leather, the low murmurs of the herd, and Alexander's steady presence beside her brought an unexpected sense of peace. But as the hours passed, her insecurities crept in. Was she strong enough for this life? Was she worthy of the man who had opened his world to her? During a break, they sat under an ancient oak tree, the branches stretching wide as if to shelter them. Alexander's gaze was intense, searching hers. "Emily," he began, carefully, "I want you to be honest with me. What scares you the most about all this?" She swallowed hard, her eyes misting. "I'm scared of losing myself, of becoming just a name on a ranch that's not mine." He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You won't lose yourself. You'll find a new part of you here with me, and I promise to protect that." Tears threatened again, but this time they weren't just from fear, they were from the fragile hope his words planted. Yet, even as they drew closer, shadows from the past lingered. Emily overheard a tense phone call Alexander made later that day, fragments of business deals, threats from rivals, and a reminder that his world was as dangerous as it was vast. She realized then that the man who seemed so strong was also battling forces she couldn't fight for him. It made her want to fight harder, to be his strength as he was hers. That night, as rain drummed softly against the windows, Emily found herself wrapped in Alexander's arms. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within them, But for the first time, their hearts beat in quiet unison. "I want to be brave," she whispered. "And I'll be brave with you," he promised. The ranch, the man, the life, it all felt like a tangle of barbed wire. But together, maybe they could unravel it, stitch by stitch, heart by heart. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, but Emily's mind was far from the peaceful dawn. Today was different. The quiet moments she had begun to cherish were shadowed by an approaching storm, not of weather, but of choices. Alexander sat across from her at the large oak kitchen table, his expression guarded but serious. The tension between them was palpable. Their marriage, once a fragile truce, had blossomed into something more real, more complicated. Yet the business world Alexander ruled was relentless, and its demands threatened to pull them apart. "Emily," he said quietly, "there's an opportunity, a deal that could change everything for the ranch. For us. But it comes with strings. I might have to spend months away, negotiating in the city." Her heart clenched. The thought of losing the man who had slowly become her anchor was unbearable. "Months?" she asked, voice barely steady. He nodded. "I want you to come with me, but I know this isn't your world. I don't want to force you." Emily looked out the window, watching a hawk soar high above the fields, free and unburdened. Her own freedom felt tangled in the choices before her. She remembered the life she'd left behind: comfort, family expectations, a safe path laid out for her. And yet, this new life, raw and unpredictable, had awakened a part of her she never knew existed. "I don't want to lose you," she said softly, "but I'm afraid of losing myself." Alexander reached across the table, his fingers intertwining with hers. "We don't have to lose either. Maybe this is the chance to build something together, not just a marriage, but a partnership." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Emily found herself thrust into a world of boardrooms, high-stakes negotiations, and polished suits, a far cry from the open skies of the ranch. But she surprised herself, rising to the challenge, learning to navigate this unfamiliar territory with quiet determination. Yet, every moment away from the ranch felt like a piece of her heart was missing. Late at night, she would lie awake, torn between two worlds, one of duty and one of desire. When Alexander finally returned, worn but triumphant, their reunion was bittersweet. They had both changed in the months apart, shaped by their separate battles. "Welcome home," Emily whispered, tears shining in her eyes. He pulled her close. "I missed you, more than I ever thought possible." In that embrace, the choice became clear, not between duty and desire, but the courage to embrace both. They could face the future together, blending their worlds into one. The days after Alexander's return unfolded gently, like the first rays of dawn after a long night. The distance between them, once filled with uncertainty, began to shrink with every shared smile, every quiet conversation. Emily felt a new strength rising within her, a confidence born not from the world she had known before, but from the one she was choosing now. The ranch, the vast land under endless skies, was no longer a cage but a canvas where their story could be painted. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, Alexander took her hand and led her outside. They walked together to a secluded spot where wildflowers swayed and the air was thick with the scent of earth and hope. "Emily," he said softly, looking into her eyes, "I want to thank you for trusting me, for staying, for learning with me." She smiled, her heart swelling. "I didn't think I could ever feel this way, but you showed me that love isn't just about grand gestures or fairy tales, it's about patience, understanding, and choosing each other every day." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch tender. "You've taught me that too. That real love means being vulnerable, letting down walls, and accepting the imperfect." As the stars began to twinkle overhead, they sat side by side on a blanket, sharing stories and dreams beneath the vast, silent sky. The night was filled with laughter and whispered promises, a celebration of the journey that had brought them from strangers to partners. Later, in the quiet intimacy of their home, they found comfort not just in each other's arms but in the shared knowledge that their hearts had finally found a home. Emily no longer cried out of fear or loneliness. Instead, her tears were those of joy and relief, proof that even the most unlikely love stories could bloom when given time, patience, and a willingness to believe. The billionaire cowboy, once a stranger with a guarded heart, had become her closest friend, her protector, and the man who made her heart melt. Together, they had learned to love at last.